Actor John Ritter said that if Horton Foote and David Lynch ran into each other at 100 miles an hour, the result would be someone like Billy Bob Thornton. He is the Arkansas native who co-wrote 1992's critically acclaimed One False Move. He has acted in everything from sitcoms to independent films to Hollywood movies. But it is Sling Blade, Thornton's directorial debut, that is winning him his greatest praise. Critics like Time Magazine's Richard Corliss and Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times say it should win him an Oscar nomination, and we're pleased to have him at this table this evening. Welcome. Great to have you. My pleasure. Let's go back to Arkansas first. I mean, let's start there and build up to this, because the story is much more fun, and we'll get to the movie. Dad was a high school coach?
Basketball coach. He coached at little towns. You know, I mean, and when I say little, I mean really little. Most of the towns he coached, population would be like 600 people, 800 people, maybe 1,000 at one of them. And there were those kind of schools that were so small that he was the principal, the history teacher, and the basketball coach. Yeah. So and for men and women teams. Yeah.
Why Hollywood?
Well, actually, Tom Epperson, who co-wrote One False Move with me and a lot of other things, we were sitting in Arkansas one day, and he said, you've always wanted to be an actor, since you're a kid, and I want to be a writer. He said, let's go to New York. So we actually came to New York first.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you did. But not long.
We stayed 10 hours.
That's what I thought. Yeah, right.
10 hours. That was it. And
what happened in those 10 hours?
Well, it's just one of those things that it takes all night to tell you the whole story. But basically, it was scary. I mean, I'd been to Six Flags in Dallas. That was it.
And
so, I didn't know anything about the city, and we saw transvestites and all that, things that I didn't even know anything about. But people don't believe me when I say that when I was 19 or 20 years old that I didn't know a lot of these things, but I really didn't.
You arrived out there, and what happened? I mean, how was the process of trying to get traction?
Gosh, it was, well, the thing that helped me was my ignorance. I always tell people my best weapon was my ignorance, because if I had known how hard it was going to be and how long it was going to take, I would have probably gone home, but it just was so. I was so naive and just kept going. I was working as a waiter at a party one time for a big Hollywood director. I'd never worn. I don't think I'd worn a tuxedo up to that point, and I went to this thing, and I was in charge of serving the hors d'oeuvres, like some kind of weird shrimp heads or some kind of thing like that.
Fish heads, you
say. Oh,
yeah.
Fish heads, yeah. And so I'm going around to these big stars and everything, and I felt kind of bad, and this little guy with an accent said, so you want to be an actor, huh? And I didn't know waiters were actors in those days. I didn't know that whole joke, but I said, yeah, how did you know? I thought the guy was psychic or something. And, he said, oh, you all want to be actors. He said, well, let me tell you something. You're never going to make it as an actor. I was like, great, thanks.
Thanks a lot.
He said,
sorry I asked.
He said, you're too damned ugly to be a movie star, and you don't look like you've been hit in the face with a frying pan, so you can't be a really great character, man. So the only thing you can do, he said, can you write at all? And I said, well, yeah, I write a little bit. I used to write some short stories. I'm trying to write a few screenplays. He said, that's your ticket right there. That's the only way to make it. He said, write your own stuff, play your own things, make your own way. Nobody's going to wait for you. And he said, the other thing is, if you always think tomorrow is the day, don't look at it down there when I make it. If tomorrow's the day. Anyway, it turned out it was Billy Wilder.
It was Billy Wilder?
Yeah, it was Billy Wilder,
You should. Yeah. I mean, everything he said has turned out to be exactly your ticket.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One False Move was the first thing that really...
Yeah.
Yeah, you did some other stuff, but that was where it came through.
The other stuff I'd done, I mean, before that, Tom and I were hired by studios to write, writing assignments and stuff, so we were able to make some kind of living in the late 80s. But up till then, it had just been horrible. I worked at a pizza parlor and all kind of stuff. And we literally starved for 5 or 6 years. And I finally... when One False Move came along, it was just, it really opened up the door, because, up till then I'd been thug number 2 or, doing writing assignments. And
how did your life change after that became almost a kind of cult favorite?
Well, we became popular within the movie industry. I still certainly wasn't any kind of household name. But I'm still not. So what am I talking about? 5 years later.
We're not Tom Cruise yet, are we?
No, we're not. We're not Larry Storch yet. But so
there's something to dream.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But all of a sudden, the guys in the studios knew who you were.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they watch movies, and what's good, they're looking for it because it may help them.
Absolutely.
But there's one great story before I get to this movie. You would go to the studios, you and Tom, to make a pitch for a screenplay.
Right.
You did not suffer these guys well.
No.
If they wouldn't see you, you're out the door.
Oh, absolutely.
But before you'd go, you'd stop by the pizza house, a couple of beers before you go in there to get the nerve up to be able to make your case.
I would go in there with about a half a bag on, as they say, and that way I knew that if they either insulted me or patronized, whatever they were going to do, or then I was ready.
Yeah.
I could go
You're
ahead.
making
with
a cable movie somewhere, and I don't make that a derogatory term, because a lot of movies being made for cable today are very good. But you're not happy, and you look around and you think, these people think I'm stupid and I'm dumb, and I mean, what am I doing here? Yeah. And you go into the trailer,
right,
and you look at the mirror, and you do what?
Well, I started some self-loathing in the mirror. And,
rather than talking to camera, we're talking to mirror.
Right, exactly. And it was a strange thing. I just started making faces at myself in the mirror.
Like what?
I was making the face that I use in Sling Blade, and I started talking in that same voice.
Carl.
I became Carl, and I'm not sure where it came from, and I started doing that monologue in the beginning. It was really
That's what
bizarre.
you did. That monologue that we see at the beginning, nicely shot in dark and with the mirror and sort of down.
I did that right then. The whole thing.
Describing the scene where you killed your mother and her lover.
Exactly. And to this day, I couldn't tell you. It's just like I have an antique phobia. I don't like to be around antiques. Actually, Dwight Yoakam has that line in this movie, but I can't eat around antiques, which is true. I can't. And those are the two things in my life I can never I can't explain.
You can't explain. It's not that you can't discuss it. You don't know where it comes from.
I don't know where it comes from.
Have you sought help on this?
Well, I actually did ask a doctor one time, and he just said, "Let's talk about something else."
Did he really?
Yeah. He said that's. He said if you don't have any clue, then
How did this monologue, which you're practicing in front of the mirror, a kind of self-loathing or something at least, end up in a movie that, this is Time Magazine this week, America. The movie's most memorable new face doesn't belong to a gorgeous thing called Gwyneth or Liv. It isn't all that pretty, even that new, seeing as its possessor, actor, auteur Billy Bob Thornton is 41 and has been kicking around film for a decade. But those who have seen Thornton as Carl Childers and Sling Blade can't get that face out of their bad dreams. What happened between that mirror and that face and that mirror and this film that we're going to see an excerpt from to get it to where it is now with all this acclaim and all this talk about a nomination?
Well, I had the monologue, and that day I said, well, you know what, maybe this is worth it after all, because that's kind of a neat character there. So what I started doing, I used to do a one-man show in the theater that I would pay for myself. I would scratch together some money and rent a theater for a couple of nights.
Yeah.
And I would invite, movie audience, movie business people to see me. And I added Carl to that. I started doing that as a part of a one-man show. And I always knew that the movie would be this, what's now the movie. I mean, that's easier to explain.
Yeah.
Once I had that monologue, it all made sense. That Carl meets a young boy who was somewhere around his age when he went in the place, in the mental institution, and that he would have a mother and that there would be an abusive relationship. I always knew that. The John Ritter character actually is the last one major character that came to my mind. And I did it in the theater for years, and then just finally got to hook up with Larry Meistrich in the shooting gallery, who gave me, they said, we won't give you much money, but we'll leave you alone. Yeah. And I said, that's a great deal.
They gave you how much?
$1 million.
About $1 million to make it. So you got Ritter, you got Dwight, you got, who else?
Duvall.
You got Duvall for
one scene,
part, and you all went down to Arkansas.
Right. Went to Arkansas, and they did it
was hot.
Free.
Ritter says it was really hot.
It was pretty hot, yeah.
And you made this film, and then Miramax comes and sees it at a screening somewhere.
Right.
And then they add 10 more million or whatever.
Right.
Take a look at this clip. Here it is.
You don't seem like you killed nobody. We can just set these bags on the porch.
All right, Dan.
Tell me what you know about the notion of memorable character, because what all the critics are saying, Carl is a memorable character. Did anything go into your head, or did it all come out in that mirror that day on that movie site?
Well, I mean, I think anything that I've ever written, anyway, has been something from my subconscious or something in my life that, just sort of a conglomeration of things. All the characters are pieces of people. I worked at a nursing home for a couple of years, and Carl has some of the mannerisms and things of some of the old guys in a nursing home where I worked, and that's just the physicality of the character. I think I got a lot from the old men in the South, but in terms of memorable characters that went into it, it only came later to me. While I was doing it, I wasn't conscious of any characters in movies or books or anything. But later, and usually when somebody else would point it out to me, you know how that is, I started to see Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
Boo Radley.
Yeah.
Boo Radley Speaks, and...
so it was lodged there somewhere in the subconscious.
I mean, most of the comparisons that are made, I suppose just because this stuff is popular now, are like Rain Man or Forrest Gump, that kind of thing. But those are really not as close to this as Boo Radley would be, or somebody like that.
You're fascinated by A1 memory, and small town life, and what? What is it that the material that you want to work with, other than the broad notion of what you know?
Well, I think that my fascination is with regular people in a small space. I think that's my thing. I like family is a real big thing to me, and I like to write about families or neighbors or anything like that. There's always this sort of misery and humor all mixed together,
and madness.
And madness, exactly, and joy and whatever else. It's all such a. I mean, in the South, the air is sort of heavy there, as you know. It's a different kind of place. And I'm not saying they don't have these kind of people in other areas. I mean, you can go to Bakersfield, California, and find a lot of families that are like this. But I'm just fascinated with those kinds of people. I mean, I've never had a desire to make a movie about lawyers or,
business executives at Wall Street.
Exactly. I don't have the desire, and it's not that I don't find those things interesting. It's just probably that I don't know enough about it, But also it's just it's kind of writing what I grew up with. Really, is all I'm doing,
Billy Wilder really had it right, but you directed as of necessity, right? Because you wanted to cast the characters, for example.
Right.
Because if you create the characters, help me out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had no burning desire to be a director.
Yeah.
Like if I were hired to direct Indiana Jones Part 4 or Batman or any of those things, frankly, I'm not technically skilled enough to do that. I don't consider myself a director. I consider myself really a writer, sort of fulfilling whatever's in the script as in the position of director, But I don't think I could be a director. I'm only doing this because I have personal movies I want to make, and I would like to see, number one, the casting. Like you said, it's once you've cast a movie with the right people, and if the story's already there, your job is just kind of, wondering when lunch is, in a lot of ways.
Right.
So, you do things like you want to create a mood or something like that. But
at a time of MTV and all of this sort of stuff, what kind of pacing are you hearing in your ear?
Well, the kind of pacing that I've always liked, it's the kind of movie I want to see. I directed Sling Blade the way I would want to see this movie. And didn't pay a
Meaning
whole,
what?
Master shots where you see all the actors reacting to each other in one shot. I don't believe in a lot of close-ups, a lot of cutting. The MTV thing, for my money, and sometimes maybe I'm too much of a loudmouth, but I have to say I think MTV has really been detrimental to the movies, and I mean theatrical movies. A lot of the directors come out of MTV videos
and
commercials, and I'm not saying that those people aren't talented at what they do, but it's a different medium. You know, it's not the same thing. I mean, you're not looking for little flashes and bites and musical notes. You know, you want. Well, actually, you know what? I made this movie in a way that you kind of have to watch it. If you're going to see it, you have to watch it. And so you can't really get a lot of popcorn and, you know, talk to somebody next door or whatever. It
draws you in.
Well, I would say so. I mean, unless you're just totally not interested in it from the beginning. If you are interested in it, it does draw you in.
How does it, I know you got to go, it is the notion of all of a sudden they're saying things like Hillbilly Wells, as in Orson Welles, or they're saying things like Billy Bob Olivier. This kind of stuff. I mean, it's almost like, I mean, Time Magazine, here it is, Billy Bob Olivier right there. No Thornton, but will Sling Blade, the genial Arkansas actor, shows his Oscar-worthy chops. All this stuff, as if like you have arrived, and this is, you know, you're going to change the business.
Yeah, well, I mean, all I can say is that it was totally unexpected, and I've been overwhelmed at, I mean, you know, I know this sounds funny, but the cards and letters, you know, that are coming in, but I've had so many big name people, you know, actors and directors and all this kind of thing, calling me up, supporting me, and first of all, it was so moving to me because these are my heroes calling me up, and
people like Oliver Stone.
Well, yeah, he put me in a movie he was doing, and you know, Walter Matthau I met the other day, you know, like legends, you know, stuff like that, and they're calling up and they're being really supportive of me. At the same time, I'm being supported by plumbers out in Encino and teenagers and all this kind of thing. And you know, I was telling somebody the other day that I made a movie for what I thought was maybe 25 people, you know, maybe my family and a few friends. And it turns out that people really get this. They really do.
Because of character. You created a character.
I think so. I think that's probably the central thing that they latch on to, probably. You know.
Great to have you here.
It's nice to have you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right.
Billy Bob Thornton's been over to Sun Studios down in Memphis, where Elvis used to record. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Billy Corgan is here. He is the lead singer of the Smashing Pumpkins. Since their 1993 triple platinum album, Siamese Dream, the band has dominated the rock charts. 1995, they released their most ambitious CD, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. It won a Grammy, 7 MTV Video Music Awards, and sold 8 million copies, making it the most successful double CD of the 1990s. The latest release, Adore, marks a departure for the band and offers what Rolling Stone calls their most intimate album to date. I am pleased to have Billy Corgan on this show after a number of years of trying to get him here. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you, Charlie.
You know we've been trying to do this.
What an introduction.
The tour first. You were here Saturday and Sunday, doing this concert and this tour. You're devoting a lot of this, all of this to charity?
Almost all of it, yeah. Some of the costs are so beyond our control, like you know, Radio City tax on a charge just because it's Radio City, stuff like that.
Why are you doing this?
There's just such a general state of negativity right now, and we're just kind of basically tired of it. And in a sense, we're trying to kind of lead some sort of movement towards positivity, and money and compassion in this day and age seem to be really novel concepts to put together. So that's,
you mean the combining of money with compassion?
Yeah, I mean, money talks in this circumstance. You know, just the idea of it is not enough. So we wanted to put our money where our mouth was and donated a substantial amount of money and actually kind of connect some dots and kind of force people to look at certain issues, namely, you know, child kind of issues, abuse. And so that's our main motivation.
Does your audience for your music care about politics?
I think they have a kind of a apathetic interest, kind of like they know it affects them, but I think they're so, people can, I mean, I see a direct translation between why people place faith in someone like me, because there's a certain purity and integrity in what we're trying to do, and as an exact kind of complement with why they don't trust the government. You know, they're turning, you know, the president should be a hero, But if the president's not a hero in their eyes or something, then they start turning to other people. People still have that need to believe in something, in somebody.
But is that celebrity worship, or is it something else?
Well, rock and roll in its purest form is not celebrity worship, but it definitely borders on that a lot these days.
And what is rock and roll in its purest form?
It's just kind of it's a corralling of energy that doesn't really have there's no means to an end. It's just, you're just kind of, it's like TNT, just keep pushing the plunger. You're not really concerned about what's going to happen. You just kind of keep marshaling all this energy into a space and you keep blowing it up. It's about cannibalizing, and that's a tough question.
Yeah. This CD, Adore, how did it do? Is it doing all right? Is it doing as well as you expected, or not so well?
It's doing pretty good. It's doing pretty good.
But not what you expected or hoped?
No, not what we hoped, no.
Why not?
I think there was a general backlash against kind of our stance that rock music has kind of reached a finite point, and it's time to kind of reassess what it means and what it's about and what it's for. And it's become so commercial, and certainly the music that we came from, which was alternative music, which was supposed to be the anti-rock.
Right.
When that became commercial and a lot of money came into it, it's become very conservative. And so, we consider ourselves one of the leading bands, so it's time for us to push the plunger and blow it all up again. I think there's been kind of a knee-jerk reaction, not only because we're attempting to change, but because people are sad that the era has come to a conclusion. So I think we're kind of being punished for that.
Define the era that's come to a conclusion.
Well, there was I would say it started around 1988 and probably went to about 1995 of rock alternative bands that kind of redefined rock and roll when people thought there was nothing left to define in rock and roll. They took something that was supposedly dead and
what bands are you including in that?
Nirvana, Pearl Jam,
right.
Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and many other worthy bands.
Are they all at the same place now? I mean, have they all sort of come to the conclusion that this is coming to an end in terms of that vogue?
I can't speak, but in the case of Nirvana, Kurt Cobain killed himself. Right. Pearl Jam made a conscious decision not to play the game of music, so they didn't make videos. They didn't tour much. Alice in Chains is not really a functioning band right now. Soundgarden has broken up. So the leading lights of that movement, it's kind of come to and even if those bands were still going, there's still a lot of copycat bands and things, so it kind of diffuses the initial energy and purity of what was going on.
Did you know Cobain well?
No, not very well.
Know him at all?
A little bit. He was a very difficult person to get to know.
Because he was quiet, because he was withdrawn, because he was on drugs, because what?
No, he was just a very intense person. He was a very intense person, and in my particular case, I mean, we were basically rivals. So when you're in your mid-20s and you're rivals, you don't necessarily sit down and have a chat over a Coke,
Well, but somehow you see each other at some certain places, I would think, at an award ceremony, things like that. And you might.
Yeah, no, I found him at times to be, a total brat, and other times I found him to be really engaging. But, he like me was a Pisces, and with Pisces, you never know what you're going to get. You
believe in that?
Oh yeah, very much.
You do?
Oh yeah, very much. I believe in all the signs of divination.
So the fact that you're a Pisces defines what about you?
Oh, do you really want to know?
Yeah, I do. I mean, your purpose here is to understand you in a way that we haven't understood before, and give you a chance to talk about things that you don't normally do. I mean, this. If I was hosting in concert, you'd be performing.
What was the question again?
Pisces. Well, Pisces, yeah. What does that tell? I mean, if you believe in it so much, what does it tell me about you?
Pisces is probably the ultimate in duality. The ancients.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you have two fish swimming in opposite directions.
Yeah. So for every.
Right. Because people can say, you're such a nice person, and the next person says you're the worst, most horrible person I've ever met. And there's truth in both of it.
Yeah.
And you don't really have a conflict with it because you are both those
and you
things.
recognize both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What else about Pisces?
Very moody. Tend to be pretty lazy.
Yeah. Why do you think you made it? Huh?
Well, I was just listening to Coach Holtz.
Interesting guy.
I was ready to play football after listening to him. Will you know, the will to do
He
something.
was right. I mean, what he's talking about is right, actually. We're talking about
Absolutely.
Lou Holtz, who was on here taping a segment. I mean, there is, and as it sounds a little bit like you've all heard it before and what people say to motivate you, but there's a truth to it. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's a truth about you, and it's a truth about anybody who's achieved the level of distinction you have.
I mean, self-determination is a big, big part of it. But you can't do something that you can't do.
Right. No matter how much people are.
Yeah.
So you had to have talent before
If I wanted to be, you know, a 100-meter
surgeon,
runner,
right.
or a brain surgeon, well, maybe a brain surgeon.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe you could do that, but a 100-meter runner, but
Right.
you don't have the
I couldn't
physical.
have done it. I couldn't have done it. No matter how many days I practiced,
Right.
no matter how hard I would have tried. For whatever reason, I found the thing that I think I'm probably best at.
And what is that?
I think I have strange talents in that I think I'm a pretty good songwriter, but I also have the ability to kind of distance from myself and look at other perspectives that I don't think a lot of artists can do for themselves. And I think I've been able to kind of roam around in musical territory where most people would be uncomfortable. And I think the other element that's why people connect with me is I'm really not afraid. I'm not afraid of being called whatever you want to call me, because emotional, kind of potent emotional territory is really the last island in rock and roll that's really unexplored.
Potent emotional territory.
I think John Lennon kind of hit, you know, when he was a solo artist, he hit, you know, peaks of kind of confessional, deep material, but no one ever really picked up that mantle. And I know why people don't, because you're opening yourself up to total. I mean, when you're opening yourself up like he opened himself up, you open yourself up to every sling and arrow because they're slinging them at you.
Are you prepared to go there?
I already have.
You think you are?
Oh yeah, I've already have. I mean, not that you have hours, but I mean, you could read plenty of good stuff and plenty of bad stuff, but there's an emotional connection that I've managed to have, and it's a part of who I am to kind of let all this emotion go and kind of transmute it into something that people understand. And I think that's very, very powerful.
What most about your childhood shaped you think?
Isolation. I felt very, very isolated. And my whole adulthood has been about not being isolated.
By being surrounded by people?
I don't have a posse or anything, but I think I definitely have opened my arms to everyone because I'm just kind of looking for that kind of connection.
Was it loneliness or was it isolation, or are they the same?
I think they're
a lot of people are
I think
isolated, but they're not lonely because they...
I felt very isolated. I think when I say isolated, I think when you feel like you should be connected and you're not, and so it makes you question why why you are isolated, and so.
And it's reflected in your music how?
That's a good question.
What's of all the...
I think I have a certain populist kind of attitude. I don't really mind reaching out to people. It's you know, in the world I've come from, alternative music, being a populist is very taboo.
Right. Why is that? Because
it's just not cool. It's just not cool. They're supposed to come to you. You kind of set up in the corner, and you're down goes the head, and everyone kind of comes to your altar.
Out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I've been very vocal from the very beginning with our band that we were only really interested in being a big band. We had no interest in being a mid-sized band or a small band or an obscure band. We wanted to be a big band. We wanted all that energy around us.
Big band in terms of reputation, in terms of attention, in terms of
energy,
ink, in terms of everything.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
It's like
in other words, you didn't want to be second. You wanted to be first.
Why? I mean,
if you're gonna do it.
Being on the cover of Rolling Stone and winning awards and playing all these concerts and being on your show, it's all fun. It's supposed to be fun. I think it's fun.
You once said something about bands of your generation have squandered their opportunity.
Absolutely.
Well, how did they do that? What did they not do? What did you not do?
Well, I use the analogy of being given the keys to the car. You know, it's like we had the keys to the car instead of driving the car, you know, and establishing our corner of the market, our parameters, our own sense of what the music business should be about. we kind of said, oh, we don't want them, and we kind of dropped the keys, and somebody else came along and picked them up. And now bands like us are suffering in an environment which is more suited to a band that's willing to do whatever to get wherever. The integrity part of the business is, I liken it very much to a moment in the late 60s where you had these, these great, powerful artists, and then, the great artists overdosed or freaked out, or bands broke up, and so ultimately we ebb away into disco, and I think that's what's happened. If the best bands of the generation don't command the attention and redefine the parameters of the business around them, then somebody else is going to do it. And I wish we wouldn't have to trust other people to do it, but that's what's happened.
But so do you? I mean, is there a kind of lament here that you're being passed by, and that you missed your opportunity?
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's not. Why is it not that? If you're saying, I mean, you think you screwed up your opportunity for long-term significance?
No, I don't think it's that. I just think that in music, there's very few opportunities, if you look at it historically, that people actually can change the business. And I believe we had an opportunity to actually change the business and redefine the parameters of what music could be.
And you didn't.
And we didn't. As a unit, we didn't.
As a group.
Ultimately,
the impact of the bands together as a composite.
Right. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones redefined what. Before the Beatles, bands didn't write their own songs.
Yeah.
We had a similar kind of opportunity to redefine what the music business could be about. Just like, baseball players with free agency. We had a chance to control, have more say, more impetus and interest in what actually goes on within the music business, so that future bands couldn't be exploited the same ways that we were exploited. Really get into the hardcore aspect of what really goes on in the music business. But in order to do that, you have to be in a commanding position. And we had 2 or 3 years there, and we just didn't take it.
I don't want to get too far along. Roll first tape, and we'll take a look at the Smashing Pumpkins in a music video. Someone listening to this for the first time who may have been watching my show for a long time and not be familiar with you, they would notice the quality of your voice. Where does that come from? The nature of your voice?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is it created, or
no.
it's just that's your natural voice?
Yeah, that's my father's
that's your singing voice.
My father's voice is actually higher than mine. My father was a singer too, and it's just I have no. You can hear sitting here talking to me. I have almost no bass in my voice.
Why? None. Huh?
It's this freak of nature thing. It's just a freak of nature thing.
So does it bother you?
Joel Schumacher, the director of the Batman, he told
right.
me, anatomy is destiny. So in that sense, that my anatomy is my destiny.
So did destiny become a singer?
No, but I'm saying
that's kind of that way.
Well, when I was 18 years old and I started singing, I tried to sing like all my idols, and I failed miserably.
Yes.
So you're left with only one choice, in my case.
But in the end, that's what creativity is about: is finding your uniqueness, isn't it? Yeah.
Or accepting your limitations.
Your limitations, however you want to define it.
Right.
Yeah. Tell me before we go about Adore, what is it you want to say here, and how much of this is a taking off for you in terms of a personal statement? Maybe including some of the things we've just been talking about.
Well, we always kind of wondered in the back of our heads, if we ever had the kind of success that people only dream of, would we, in essence, cave into what would be expected of us when you have big success, which is to continue doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so we found ourselves at the doorstep, and we did exactly the opposite. We broke completely from our past as much as one could, and made an album that we think is a bold step in a new direction, in a direction that no one's really gone in yet. Because in our minds, it's got to do with the continuity of what we're attempting to do in the long run, which is influence and be progressive and stay very much on the cutting edge of music. And it's strange because we find ourselves in the position we were 7 years ago, where people are saying, you guys are crazy, you don't know what you're doing, which is exactly what they said about our first album. So we've gone completely full circle.
Well, that'll keep you alive and keep you awake, won't it?
That's what we believe, yeah. That's what we believe.
There's also some touching things here. One, the song To Martha is about your mother who passed away in the last year. Yes?
Yeah.
And other things that are personal, that are...
Yeah, but I just consider those touchstones for much bigger subjects.
Like what? Death, like memory, like...
Yeah. I think, like, people have tried to put this album in the context of my mother passing away, our former drummer leaving the band, me getting a divorce. But to me, you can look at loss and talk about, you know, the cup being half empty, or you can look at loss and see somebody who's decided they want to live and take the memories that they have and empower them to move on.
That's you.
That's me, yeah, absolutely. I mean, 3 years ago, I was a total mess. I was a total mess. I mean,
in what way?
I wasn't a happy person inside. I mean, the person that made, you know, the most successful album of my life was not a happy person inside. I'm a happy person inside now, because at some point when someone close to you, and my mother was very close to me, passes away, and passes away early, you go, well, you know, do I care what this magazine says about me, or do I care about fulfilling my happiness in my life? And I think I looked at those things and tried to learn the lessons, because to me that's the greatest respect I can pay for my mother, is to take her courage in dying and the fact that she lived her life the way that she wanted, and use that as strength and energy to do what I want to do in my life, and not get caught up in the cycle of you've got to keep feeding some machine that you can't even see because it's behind some kind of Wizard of Oz curtain.
I have two thoughts about all this. One is it's interesting to see someone, if they're honest and legitimately asking questions. You know, how have we done, and where have we gone, and did we miss opportunities? You know, and what's this all about, and how do I take it somewhere else? I mean, you don't want to use a hackneyed phrase like sort of, you know, pushing the edge of the envelope, but it is in part whatever that means. It is in a sense finding out how do I stretch the limits of my potential in terms of resonation, you know, in terms of resonating with my fans. And you're doing a lot of that. And with what?
And with a smile.
And with a smile, yeah. How long can you do this, rock and roll?
My guess would be at the crazy kind of high saturation level, maybe 4 or 5 more years.
Yeah.
It's to be an artist like this in the late 90s it's like soul scarring. I mean, you can't do it.
Yeah.
You can't do it. It's just too crazy. And, you know, I've had disputes with magazines and stuff, and what I've tried to tell them on a bigger level is, you know, there has to be heroes. You know, it doesn't have to be me, but we have to have some heroes. And the culture we're in right now, there are no heroes. You know, mythology will tell you we have to have heroes and we have to have some villains, but if we only have villains, we're missing a lot of heroes right now. And there are heroes out there. I meet them all the time.
Well said. Thank you, Billy.
Thanks, Chuck.
Billy Corgan, songwriter, lead singer, Smashing Pumpkins album, Adore. Back in a moment. Stay with us.